So now we're going to do a second version. So me and Astra, we're going to be the questioners, and we're going to do a different version. So Ruby, you're going to be Kathy, and Daniel, you're going to be Bryan. And we're going to look at a scene much later in the play. So this is after the third act. And Phil has just told you, Bryan, that you have to go and lie to the police. They found the police officer, and they found the postman, and you need to tell them that that is the guy. That's the one who took Adam. And they've also got you there, Kathy, to question, to talk to you, because you've been kind of helping out Bryan through this. So we're going to have a look question. The way we're going to do this slightly differently, and we're going to use the power of Zoom, is that we're going to kind of question you one at a time. And we're going to try and take information. So it's like you're in an interview room, and we're going to try and take the information that we get from one of you and try and use it against the other one, just to kind of push. The idea of this isn't trying to like trick them into confessing the murder, but the idea is that we're just putting them in a slightly more high pressured environment to see how they respond. Yes, with this idea that they're in this police station. All that stuff, information about, you've just come from the forest. You've just had Phil's just told you what to do. You've just identified the postman as well. So it's just after that. All of that is all our given circumstances that we're taking into this improvisation. Yeah, great. Any questions?
No.
Awesome, nope. Great. So we're going to start with Kathy. Yes. So Daniel is going to mute himself and turn off his audio. And then we'll swap over. He'll see Ruby's mic come off. He's gone as well. When Ruby goes, we'll see Daniel appear, and then we can have a conversation with him. And we'll do 2 rounds of this. So we'll meet you twice, Ruby, and then we'll meet Daniel twice as well, and we'll go through that. We won't spend long with each of you, just so we can explore this idea. Yeah. All right. Take a couple of seconds. Daniel as well. It might be worth you just getting into mode as well. You can't hear us. I don't know why I'm saying that. It's irrelevant. You can't hear anything I'm saying. You can see my gestures. I'm gonna have a chat. Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
We just we're just been having a chat with your friend Bryan. Bryan's your friend, yeah? Yeah. And we're just getting some information from them. How are you dealing with your friend missing?
Yeah, I mean, it's tragic what happened. It's wild. I can't even believe that what's happening. But I mean, I feel bad for Adam, and I wish I could help more and be with him and understand what happened. But I just don't know anything really.
Okay. And how would you say your relationship with Adam was?
Yeah, I mean, we were quite close. We were in the same group. We got on, saw eye to eye, and I have no idea why someone would ever, do anything to him. And after hearing what happened, I'm appalled at how he even got to be in that situation. It's awful.
And how are you? How do you know Bryan?
Oh, same school. We're in the same friendship group. He's great. He's sensitive, but I'm always there for him. So close.
It's very kind of you to be looking after him so much. How's Bryan dealing with the whole situation, do you think?
He's finding it harder. I think he was closer to Adam than I was, and I didn't think he saw this coming. He's really sensitive, so don't pressure him too hard if you question him. But yeah, I'm just going to be there for him as much as I can, really.
And how are you helping him? How are you being there for him at the moment?
Just making sure that he doesn't need anything, or just being there for a shoulder for him to cry on, if you get what I mean. And just being with him today, taking him here so he can have someone he knows when he says what he saw.
Yeah, that's very good of you. It's very noble.
That's great. Great. We're just going to step out for a second. So we'll be back in a minute. Would you mind just turning on your audio off? That would be great for us. Thanks. Hello, Bryan.
Yeah,
Hi, Bryan.
how you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah,
Yeah. How was that just now? Is that seeing that man again?
hard.
Yeah. And we've just been speaking to some of your friends. Have you got people to help you at the moment?
At home, yeah, my friends are helping me through it as well.
That's
Great.
good. Good. And out of all of your friends, who's kind of helping you the most? Is there one particularly, or are they all clubbing together to support you?
Well, Richard was the one who encouraged me to tell the police in the first place. He's been really good.
Are you particularly close with Richard?
I'd say so. I'd say so. He's been there for me the past few days, week.
Mm,
Oh, great.
important.
That's great. Yeah. That's
And
good.
so, where were you again when you first saw this the postman?
Um, so he took me to the woods.
Yeah.
It was after school sometime.
Mhm.
And I saw his uniform. I trusted him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's hard. It's tough. You're doing really well. You're doing really well. And did you tell anyone else about this incident other than Richard?
At the time, I'm sure I mentioned it maybe jokingly to a couple of people that I can't remember who.
Okay.
That's all right. And when you mentioned it to them, what was their response? What did they think about it?
Maybe a bit of uncomfortable laughter at first because, and it was Richard that had to take me aside and say that maybe this wasn't funny, and he thinks that I was deflecting to some extent.
Okay.
Interesting. Okay, great. Well, if you could just hit your mute button there, Bryan, that would be great. We're just going to bring Kathy back in. Great, lovely. Can you still hear us, Bryan? Oh no, Kathy's gone. Okay. Oh, there he is. He can hear us. Lovely. Turn your audio back on. Turn your audio on. Lovely, good. We're going to hold it there just for the sake of, well done, just for the sake of cracking on. But that was really lovely because I think we've got the idea there, which is really nice. So, well held in the character as well there, Ruby. I have no idea if you're in character the whole time you're on screen. I believe that you were. Great. How was that? Anything that we kind of gleaned from our questioning there?
Yeah, I think it kind of like I don't know about Ruby because I couldn't hear her. I've muted my mic.
Yeah.
So yeah, it like encouraged you to like think about what you've been told to say or like what you've been told to do. So like it made sense for me to tell the police that I was close to Richard because he took me to the police station. Initially, I'm sure he did as well. Reading the play again, I'm sure that was the case.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, you are.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, go with that. He's your best friend right now. Yeah, there's also like a pressure to succeed or like pressure to lie well because you've been
Yeah.
Yeah.
my character had been threatened to like be murdered, really.
Yeah.
So
How was it in your room, Ruby?
Yeah, definitely playing Kathy, it certainly felt very three-dimensional because I mean, on one hand, she's loving this. Like, she loves the idea she's been asked to come to this interview and that she's in this and she loves it. She said she found it exciting. But then on the other half, she has to pretend to be sad and, has to pretend to like Bryan and all this stuff. And I think there's just so much like in that character, there's like two parts. And I was trying to play like both to see how they like, combine together.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
How was it questioning, Aisha?
Yeah, it was good to yeah, when you asked them the question, just to see the initial response. Kathy's quite quick responses, thinking on her feet, to Bryan just taking a moment, and the same as he just said, like thinking about his lie. You can tell that kind of processing through his head. He's waiting and thinking, okay, I can say this. Whereas Kathy, she's very quick. She knows what she's doing. She's loving the moment. So she's got those responses there. She's ready.
Yeah, completely. I think it was a great question you asked about, sorry, Daniel, about who are you really close to? Who's your friend? Kind of like, okay, we've just come out from Kathy, and Kathy's like, oh yeah, I'm helping Bryan all the time. Like, we're really great friends, blah, blah, blah. We're going to see Bryan, and Bryan's like, oh, Richard, definitely Richard. And you're like, oh, okay, oh, really? If we continued this game, we would have gone back into the room and we'd been like, just didn't mention you like at all. Like, he didn't talk to you. Like, he's not really mentioned anything. What's he told you about today? Because we could have gone down the whole like backstory of like the postman taking, and like, does Kathy know that? Does she not know that? Like, is she going to play on that, or is she going to let us know? Like, there's all that stuff that becomes really interesting as we're suddenly getting, you don't know what he said. So then we can start playing that game, which becomes really exciting. Right. Sorry, Daniel, I cut you off before.
Yeah, it was more or less that. I was just going to ask what you were trying to catch me out on based on what you already said.
Yeah, that was it. And you dropped it right in it. But it's one of those things where it's like, it wouldn't necessarily mean that, you know, in the world of the play, we would have been like, no, it was definitely them. Like, it would just be like, for us to be able to explore, okay, their understanding of how they're representing the plan can change ever so slightly, and all the like nuances of it. And it forces you to think about it and consider all the lies that are like tied up in it. So it's a really lovely little way of just kind of ramping that pressure up a little bit, just so that that's a really hard thing in this play, because the time span of it, we've got no idea really. We can kind of guesstimate what the time span is, but trying to get the rise in those stakes all the way through, and realizing how long the period between some of these things have happened, and just rising that stake there, because this is a really traumatic moment for Bryan in particular, and for Kathy again, it changes everything. It's a really important moment for her as well. Great, but that's our little police officer interrogation room hot seating version, so well done. That was really lovely. Okay, great, well done. So we're now going to move on to an exercise called Mafia, which is actually a kind of old party game, really. It's been popularized a lot recently by a game called One Night Ultimate Werewolf, which you may have come across. You can play completely free online. So if you are doing this in school, that might be a really lovely way of playing this game, because you can run it through a web app. But the idea of this is that we're going to be looking at this idea of group dynamics and persuasion and deceit. And the game is really simple. So what's going to happen is I'm going to assign 3 roles in the chat. One of you is going to be a mafia. One of you is going to be the juggler, and the other one is going to be a civilian. And they each have different actions. So the mafia is going to swap their role with someone else, unbeknownst to the other person. Yes. The juggler, you're going to swap 2 roles. So you might swap your role and someone else's role, or you might swap the other 2 people's roles, unbeknownst to them as well. And then civilian, you don't get an action. You're just going to find out if you're something different. And then before we come back and have a chat, I'm going to tell you again who you are, if it's changed or if it's the same. And then we're going to have a little 1.5-minute discussion. And in that time, you need to work out as a group who the mafia is. And then I'm going to ask you to vote to decide who you think the mafia is. They're going to kind of be voted off or killed off, whoever the person who receives the most votes. The job of the person who ends up being the mafia, your job is to convince the group that it's not you, that it might be someone else. Yes? So you've got to use your tactics there. We're going to do this all kind of through the chat, so we're all just going to be talking through there. So if you mute and turn off your cameras, wait for me to give a thumbs up, because then we won't see when people are typing and sending the answers. So turn your cameras off so you can't see anyone. Mute and goodbye. Lovely, good. And I'm going to tell everyone in chat what their roles are, and then I'm going to introduce this. You should all still be able to hear me, so it doesn't matter about mute. So I'm just handing out the roles now. Okay, so they've each got a role. So I'm now going to ask the Mafia, whoever the Mafia is, I would like you to give me a name of someone that you're going to swap your role with. Amazing. Now, the Juggler, you're going to send me 2 names of who the roles that you're going to switch around. So it could be yours and another person's, or it could be both of the other 2 people. Just give me 2 names that you're going to swap the roles of. Amazing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work out who swapped and who swapped where, and I'm going to assign your new roles. Great. I'm just going to set a timer for 1.5 minutes. There it is. Okay, you come back now. There is a Mafia amongst you. You have 1.5 minutes to work out who it is.
Well, Ruby, why isn't it you?
Huh?
Why isn't it you? Like, what are your reasons for not being the case?
Okay, so do you want some evidence then?
Yes, go for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so basically last night I was at home with my wife, watching the TV. You know, my children were in bed, put them to bed around 8 o'clock. We watched a movie. It was kind of bad, to be honest. And then we went to bed around 10:30, 11, and that was it.
What did you watch? What did you watch?
What did we watch? Oh, this new movie. It was called What Happened to Monday. It was good.
So,
What were you doing, Daniel?
what? Sorry, listen.
What were you doing?
I'm a civilian. Doesn't matter what I'm doing. Right.
What were you doing?
So, Ruby,
You're
why?
a civilian.
If
Nothing
it's
to
not
hide.
you, why is it Nyastra?
Why is it me? Or
Yeah, why
is
is it? Like, you need to convince me that it's Nyastra because I'm civilian over here.
You sure about that? You keep like asking everyone else and passing
Yeah,
the
listen.
blame.
Someone needs to take charge. I am the only one I know who's fine right now. I'm
Interesting.
completely safe.
Bit dodgy.
I
think
like
it's
that
you, Ruby.
tactic. I like that tactic. Deflect straight away.
Not deflecting. I'm not deflecting it. No,
Time's up. Mute
deflect.
yourself. Send me the names of the people, the person that you would like to vote off. I'm now going to wait for the names. Interesting. Interesting. Ooh. Interesting. Lovely. Good. You can all come back. I can announce. Where's Maisha? There she is. I can announce that Ruby, you have been voted off and removed. And the Mafia won. Nyastra, well done, was the Mafia.
No!
I voted you. I knew it. I knew it.
No! I thought it was you, Ruby. I was like, why are you talking about your night last night with your wife? I was like, you're 16.
Amazing. Great. So, just looking at that as from purely analytical basis, what were some of the kind of tactics that people employed to try and get their way?
I think for me, one thing I've noticed when I played Mafia before, people who are not the Mafia are always like, I was doing this, I was doing that. Just to be a bit chill and let everybody else speak, because then people can just incriminate themselves and you just chill for a bit.
Right, just silence won the game. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. I thought that's what I was like, because I thought Daniel was passing the blame, and obviously I knew it wasn't me, so I felt like it wasn't Daniel because it's too obvious if he was passing it to everyone else. I thought, well, no, it would obviously be him. So I went for Nastra because she was being very quiet and just back away from the conversation and just let me and Daniel battle it out. So I went.
Yeah, I don't know.
So why did you go for Ruby, Daniel?
Because, like, I don't know, it was just, I was like, I didn't know if you were to explain yourself and it was too detailed. I was like, you're making things up. You're just making it up.
I'm such a bad liar. Like, I wasn't even lying, but the way you did it, I felt like I was lying. It was scary.
Great. It's really lovely. So I mean, you can talk about the game in it as well. You can get to the point where you can be like, look, I was the juggler and I did this and this. You can try work out that way, but obviously the Mafia is going to be saying, no, but I did this, and trying to confuse it that way, or can try that tactic. But I mean, immediately, even if we're just looking at group dynamics, and again bringing that to our DNA, Daniel immediately coming in with this, like, let's do this, this. Like there was an almost an air of Leah at the start of Act 2, where Leah comes in, she's like, right, I'm going to try and fix this, and then just got everything wrong. Perfect. It was great. What were you doing? What's this? No, tell me, talk to me. Just under the radar, Nyasha's just like float. So when Nyasha wins as the Mafia, it's like her coming out at the end as Kathy and being like, it was me, and everyone being really proud about it. It's a really lovely little element of that. But then Ruby as well, there's almost a Leah element in that, and just going, I'm just going to go off on one. Here we go. That's really great. But there's that dynamic of, okay, taking control, yeah, buying yourself time, keeping quiet, yeah, just keeping low and out of the way. I mean, there's a Lou element in there with that kind of group dynamic of, I'm just going to stay quiet and out of the way, yeah, or I'm just going to interject when I really need to, yeah, or when I panic, yeah, whatever it is. So there's loads of little dynamics in there. So we're just going to play it one more time. We might talk about some of the group dynamics again in this second version, but I just want to do a version that hopefully we can kind of show to the people watching who is who before we get into the discussion, just to play with this idea of what happens if we know who is who. How does that change the world and the knowledge and us as an audience, how we watch the piece of material? Yeah, but I think it's a really important question for us to consider that if you've read the play in particular, and this is something that I considered when we were presenting to audiences, and it's really important to think about who your audience is. For this play, a lot of schools who've read this play are coming to see this play. So you view it in a very different light when you know how Adam's died, you know what the plan is, you know how it all goes wrong. When you know that stuff, it changes your observation of the way that you view it. Yeah. So it's just to think about how that bit of information changes that, but how that might have an impact on the way that we present or choose to play with some of the elements within it. So I'm just going to do it one more time. So could you all mute yourself? And partly we're going to play again because it's really fun. And I'm going to send you all your roles. Great. So Mafia, could you give me a name, please? The name of someone that you're going to swap your role with. You need to send me the name of one of the others in the room. That might be an autocorrect problem that you've just had there, Mafia. Great. Juggler, I need 2 names from you. And Civilian, you will just wait. Great. So let me just remember that for later. Okay, great. You can all come back. You have a minute and a half. Enjoy.
Oh,
Hey.
So there's been a murder. Which one of you is it?
There we go. The accusation. Straight off the bat, Astra.
Well, I didn't accuse you specifically, so you've got something
Yeah.
to
This is not right. No, and this happened last time, right? This happened last time.
What
I'm not.
you there, Daniel?
I'm going to be quieter this time, right? I'm going to let
Yeah,
you.
I feel like everyone's wanting to be quiet.
No
Interesting.
reason.
Interesting.
Well, I'm gonna ask Nyastra, like, what were you doing at the time of the murder? Just because I'm curious.
So I was just out and about. I currently love the bakery Gales. They do a lovely blueberry muffin, so that was lovely with a nice chai latte. Went for a nice walk. It was great. It's snowing, so it was beautiful. Yeah, it was beautiful.
I thought
Nice.
Gales was shut though, you know, Corona.
Well, you can get a takeaway, my friend.
Okay, fair enough.
What about you?
Me? Oh, I mean, I was in the park walking the dog. It's quite quiet at the moment because, you know, not many people
10
around.
seconds.
Just round the lake. Went back home. Was it really? Not much today.
I think Gales is shut.
Time's up. Time's up. Mute yourself. Send me a name. Who are you voting out? Don't necessarily need to disappear, but just send me a name. That's fine. Okay, good. Lovely. Oof. Yeah. Okay. Oof. Okay. Good. Come back, Nyastra. Everyone, turn your audio back on. All right, lovely. I can announce that Nyastra, you have been killed off, voted off by the group. But in fact, Daniel was the Mafia. Great. I mean, it worked twice in a row. Just say nothing. Just say nothing. Let Ruby go off on one about Gales. Let Nyastra just go for their walks and just let them vote themselves out.
I was just so lucky that no one was like asking questions about who swapped who. I was like, because I'm done. Like I was like, you know what, go off about Gales. You keep talking.
You are playing. I mean, you are playing the game in an interesting way. You don't need to make up all the improvisation of the stuff of where you are. You can just jump right into the who swapped who, and no, you can't be the juggler and all that kind of stuff. But it is great to see that as a way of playing it and the way of doing it, because it actually allowed us to kind of see that real feel way of just, if you just stay quiet, just breezing through that and just watching the accusations fly. And what was really lovely there for me is knowing who everyone was, watching Nyastra and Ruby, watching you two just kind of battle it out with your like innocent stories and your plan and how that's going to work, and you're both kind of at each other while Daniel's just sitting there going, yes, this is fine. And not having to say anything until the moment, like, unless we got to the point where it was like, okay, I really need to say something now, like Phil, Daniel can just be there until he's kind of called in and he needs to respond, which is an absolute Phil quality. Great, well done. There's a city game for you. Enjoy that. It works great with big groups. And there's different variations of that as well. If you look that up online, there's loads of different roles that you can play as well, and it's a really easy thing to kind of do online. And I do recommend, if you wanted to explore this while exploring DNA, you can try One Night Ultimate Werewolf online, and it's completely free. It's good for classes to explore this idea as well, because you could do half the group watch while half the group play the game, and you can see how the dynamics come across as well. So there's a game about power dynamics for you. I'm going to do a little bit of some writing, just to pull apart and explore the world of DNA a little bit, that we can discuss. So I'm calling this mapping DNA, and there's lots of ways of doing this. We're going to do this separately. If we were in a space, what we might do is we might gather around in groups around particular topics for this exercise. But the idea of the exercise is that I'm going to give you four titles, and we're going to spend a minute on each one. And I just need you to respond to that title, writing kind of as many things as you can, responding to that title. We're going to spend a minute on each one. Yeah. So the four titles that we're looking at are themes. So what are the themes in DNA? You're going to write as many of those themes down as you can. key images. So when we talk about key images, it could be images from the play. So it could be the moment Adam reappears. That might be a really key image for you. Or it could be moments that don't actually appear in the play. So it could be Bryan standing, pointing out the postman. That's not, we don't actually see that in the play, but it might be a really key image that you think is really important for you. Or we could potentially see in the play in our version. Then there's questions. So any questions you have about the play. So that could be really specific stuff about, I don't understand this part of Phil's plan, or it could be like, don't know what Leah's talking about in this bit, or it could be that I don't know why Danny wants to be a dentist. So it could be questions like that we can try and think of some answers to. And then the last one is tools. So we're talking about performance tools. So it doesn't need to be in the world of this play. All I want to do is just build a big toolbox of performance tools that we could use. So that might be puppetry, that might be silhouettes, that might be physical theatre, and you might break down into physical theatre, or that might be lifting or whatever. And you can break down into my particular exercises that you know that create stuff. But that's just going to give us a big tool of tools that we can use, that if we were in rehearsal and we were really stuck in a moment, we can go, let's just explore this in a completely different way, because it might spark something really creative. Yeah, I'm not saying we're going to do DNA completely with puppets, but exploring it with puppets in an interesting way might open up some creativity for us. So it's just about making a toolbox. There's loads of other things that we could look at, but we're just going to focus on these four. We could, for instance, look at stuff like characters, or we could look at like specific events in the play. We could look at relationships and how they spawn, but we're just going to look at these four for now. And we could do it in a way that if we were all in one room, we could all gather around one particular piece of paper for themes, and we could jump off of other people's ideas and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to do it individually just for now, and come back and discuss. So we're going to spend a minute on each. We're going to start with themes. And just for a minute, I want you to write as many themes of DNA as you can think of in 1 minute. And off you go. Lovely. Stop there. Good. Key images next. So key images. Off you go. So just as a reminder, key images is any images that have happened in the course, or in the course of the play, or that we don't see in the play. Moments that you think have like a real vivid picture to them that happen within the course of the play. Lovely. Stop there. Questions. 1 minute on questions. So any questions you have about the play, anything that happens in the play, any questions that you don't feel you have answered yet. Lovely. Hold it there. And then last one is tools. So performance tools. So any kind of tool, doesn't have to be in the line with the play, just any performance tool that you can possibly imagine. It could be tools that you know from the Brecht catalogue, could be signs, could be music, could be using a microphone, could be dance, anything you like. If we're doing this in groups, actually, if we're doing this with class online, what we might be able to do is do breakout rooms. That might be a really lovely way of doing it, looking at particular themes in a group. All right, lovely, good. Hold it there. Well done, great, welcome back. So we're just going to quick discuss. So this is just purely a way to just start building up our initial understanding of DNA. And again, these were things that we could, certainly questions and like key images of things that we could write and stick on the walls of the rehearsal room and just have them all the time. And our questions should constantly be getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Like the list should be getting longer, and we should keep being able to answer the questions as we rehearse and find answers to play, so that by the time we get to performance, we've filled in all the answers to all these questions. We have a really strong grasp of how we understand the play. And all the other stuff helps us kind of fuel the play and make parts of it as we rehearse it. So throw some themes at me. What themes have we got?
Social structure / power dynamics.
Yeah.
Responsibility.
Oh yeah, great one.
Like life and death, your morality on this.
Oh yeah, morality around life and death. Yeah, I mean the stakes that surround life and death as well is great. Yeah, social responsibility is really important. Accountability. There's a lot of stuff about that. And I have like leading into questions. I've got a lot of questions about why Phil decides to take on this responsibility. I have no idea why he does it in the first place. I mean, I've got an idea why he does it in the first place, but when I first read it, I was like, why is he doing this? He wasn't there. he's a smart kid. Why doesn't he just walk away and be like, they killed someone and be done with it?
Mm.
Why? So there's a really big question about that kind of idea of responsibility. And I think it ties in a lot to something you raised earlier with Phil earlier as well, Daniel, about self-sufficiency, self-preservation, and all that idea. I think it ties into that world a lot. So there's loads of themes there that we can play with. Great. Good stuff. I'm going to press on. Key images. What key images do people come up with?
Threatening Bryan, and then plastic bag later on.
Yeah, really key images with Bryan. Yeah, that this kind of, especially jumping off your power dynamics comment, just kind of Adam's gone, so who's the next lowest? It's Bryan, and it's in that social hierarchy of things. So all these kind of horrendous things keep happening to the lowest person in their kind of social structure. Yeah, great.
I wrote down Leah like speaking to Phil at the beginning, just that image of itself, someone who's very busy but then he's very still, so that kind of sets it off from the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's lovely to think about the image in a kind of three-dimensional kind of movie way. Like I always imagine that as one of those like holographic cards where if you moved it, Phil would stay exactly the same, but Leah would be like all over the place. That's a really lovely like little image. Actually, and it's the image we always return to, top and tail, every act. We're back to that imagery, yeah? So it's a really important image that we kind of come to that and we question, okay, how do we find different variations of this same thing? We keep returning to the same spot with these same people in the same world, but how do we make each scene different and interesting? And that's really a really important question for key images. Yeah, Ruby, do you have anything for key images?
Yeah, the moments of when they were actually framing that man and how like the process panned out.
You mean in terms of like when they were making the plan?
You know, when like the moment we don't see when they're actually sort of executing Phil's plan and if it goes to plan. And
yeah, absolutely. And I mean that's a really useful thing to raise, because actually in the first two versions of DNA that I did 3 versions. The first 2 we staged the plan happening. We staged bin bags flying around and uniforms and getting the trainers and climbing down stuff and all those bits and pieces, and the execution of that plan actually happening. So that was such a key image for me that I decided to bring that to life in between the kind of transitional moments. So that's great, lovely little key image, fantastic. Questions do people have?
So I wrote like setting and like when it is. You brought up when earlier, but yeah, just kind of they're not there.
It isn't there, no, and that's a great question, and that's one of the really early questions we can just set out immediately, because what's a really helpful thing to do in production is lay out a timeline, stick on the wall. This is where we start, this is where we end, what's the timeline? And that was something we considered in this direction of DNA as well, is that we decided that we started in the autumn and we were kind of ending in the winter, because and then having the kind of 4th act on what's happened in the spring, because that rebirth of everything. We're like meeting that idea of world of change, but it also seemed the most bleakest version to have Adam reappear midwinter in the cold and the bitter, and everyone else has got coats and everything. So that's a really important thing. Yeah, when timelining it and answering that question is really important. Yeah, great question. Another one.
I want to know if the truth ever came out, and did that postman go to jail, and or did he get liberated, and did they ever tell the truth
to the world after the play? Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because that plays in a lot to even potentially the way Richard's text is delivered. Might be really important for the actor playing Richard to know where we are and how far into that future we are actually when Richard speaks happening. That could be, there's no time span on that. That could be days after, that could be months after. Yeah. Who knows? Yeah. Yeah, another one.
And I wrote down, just as earlier Daniel was saying about Phil being Leah's girlfriend, I wrote down, does Phil love Leah? You know, because you see that change at the end, you know, he goes back to being quiet, you know, does he love her? Is there some sort of fluttering there?
Vital, yeah, absolutely vital question for Phil. Yeah, and that's one of those questions that actually I think is going to change with every version of DNA and that relationship, and I think it has every time I've done it in terms of what that relationship is, and how, I mean, there's even a question of how you define what love is and how how Phil defines what love is and how Leah defines what love is, and how those two kind of butt heads. That's a really interesting question. Yeah, that goes really deep. So that's a really lovely thing to ask, and that's one of those things where the timeline question, we could probably work together and answer that. The love question, that might take the whole rehearsal process to work out that might, we don't know. Yeah, but we'll play with different angles of approaching that. What if it's this? What if it's that? And that will keep morphing and changing. Yes, that's a really lovely question. All right, last thing is just tools. What tools do people write down?
So I wrote, like, there's the Mark's monologue. That was just like, I want to bring up, like, just monologue itself. It's present.
Monologue as a tool. Yeah. Absolutely. So that is present in the play. So we might think about, okay, what if we were staging this as a monologue? What if no one else was on stage? How might we do that? That might be a really lovely creative way to explore some of those texts. We have to do that it almost feels like that with Leah all the time, but that Mark one is really important. Yeah, that when he gets left alone and isolated, what happens if we did a version where we rehearse and it's just Mark on stage? How would that be presented? That might present some really lovely presentational ways of doing that monologue. Yeah, really lovely.
I wrote down, like, conscious alley kind of thought tracking as we go along.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could do that with every character, and we can try pull out, and that might be a really lovely practical way for us to explore different parts of the character, but with everyone chiming in on what that is. Yeah. Do you want to just quickly explain what a conscience alley is, just in case anyone doesn't know what that is?
Yeah, so the character is almost thinking out loud their ideas or what's in their head, what they're thinking, that tracking their thoughts as they go along. Great,
really lovely. Ruby?
Like you said, physical theatre, and two that came to mind for me were hymn hands and round by through, and then sort of playing with dynamics, levels of tension and pace with those within that.
Great. So loads of physical stuff that we could explore. And that, I mean, you've named a couple of frantic assembly tasks there, as well as states of tension is a Jack Lecoq, I think was the original version. But it's all that stuff is great, because that stuff will go, actually, let's not look at this from the text point of view. Let's make some physical stuff. Let's get the actor playing Kathy and the actor playing Bryan to make a sequence, a physical sequence. We don't know where it goes. We don't know what's going to happen with it. We're just going to get them to make a physical sequence and then see what happens. And then we can start to apply parts of the text or part of some of the themes or some of the emotions or intentions or objectives to that physicality, which might give us a really lovely alternative way of exploring that relationship. So that's great, because that gives us loads of stuff that we could explore. And it might be that physical stuff becomes stuff we do purely to rehearse and develop the character, or you might go, actually, no, that's really lovely, let's put that in the show, and maybe that's a transitional moment between some of the scenes. That's a really lovely way that we might explore kind of physical theatre and use those tools. Great, really lovely. As I said, we could do this in lots of ways. We could explore lots of different things in this way, but it's really lovely to just voice some of these alternative worlds, think about the key images, and a really useful thing, I think, to pull together what these tools are so that we can think about alternative ways that we might approach exploring this, that takes us out of the world necessarily of the naturalistic, or ways that we can explore the subtext in symbolic ways might be really exciting. But great. Well done. That's Mapping DNA.